This is Capital Notes from Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Maayan Silver. We're just ahead of the very consequential 2024 election. A good time to check in with J.R. Ross, editor of WisPolitics.com. Hi, J.R. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, so early voting is over. People need to either return their mail-in absentee ballots to their clerk's offices by 8 p.m. tomorrow or vote at the polls. Wisconsin isn't one of the 31 states with party registration, so we don't know if people voting are Democrats, Republicans, or independents. But is there anything you've been able to garner from early voting returns this year, JR?
Well, we're still waiting for the Elections Commission to have the post-weekend update on early voting, absentee voting, so I can do a deeper dive in the numbers. But the trends we were seeing kind of in the last week have been kind of consistent all through the week, which we have these kind of key areas of Wisconsin, right? We call them the Bow counties, Brown, Outagamie, Winnebago. Those were about the same share of the overall early vote compared to 2020. The WOW counties, your Waukesha, Ozaukee, and Washington, they were a little bit higher than they were in 2020 for the overall share of the vote. Dane County, pretty much on target. Milwaukee County was a little behind, and that was particularly in the city of Milwaukee. Now, again, those last days, there was early in-person voting Saturday and Sunday in Milwaukee. I want to get those numbers, do a little bit of a dive there and see if that helped catch them up. And, of course, there's also Election Day voting. But what I'm picking up from people is, one, it's hard to do a true comparison of 2020 because it's such a different election. Done during a pandemic, 3.3 million votes cast, 2 million of those absentee. Of the absentee ballots, only a third cast early in person. We typically do more in-person early voting than by mail. So, okay, there's one thing. Two, we're not going to have, we don't think we will, unless there's a huge surge in the final days, the same number of absentee ballots cast this year compared to 2020. So that's a little bit different. But that said, that share of the vote is at least a benchmark to go, okay, they're running about where we expect them to. Now, the key is not just the share of the vote, but who's actually voting. So when I look at a Washington County, for example, we have seen their voting as a bigger share of the overall early vote than they were 4 years ago. But if those are reliable voters who vote every election, like spring, fall, special, et cetera, they were going to turn up on Tuesday no matter what to vote. They're not a new voter. They're a reliable voter. That's not only adding to the Republican column for, exceeding the vote from 2020. So, but looking up in rural outstate Wisconsin, we're seeing some signs of low propensity voters coming out and registering. That's good for Trump. We're seeing signs in Dane County of low propensity voters, which are read to be college students, which typically, and I stress typically, tend to vote more Democratic. If that is the case and they are voting in big numbers for Democrats, that's good for Kamala Harris. And then through the end of last week, now I'm a dork about this stuff, I fully admit that, and I dive in these numbers all the time, but I don't have the information that the parties do where they know they have a voter file and they rate you, how likely are to be one of them versus one of the other side. If you're a likely voter like every election or if you turn out once every 4 years, they have breakdowns. I'm hearing from my sources that through the end of last week, the electorate was a little bit more female in the early vote. Now, if passes prologue, women tend to vote more Democratic in Wisconsin and elsewhere. We've seen a huge gender gap this cycle. So that could, and I stress could, be a big deal for Democrats. But the reality is we're kind of trying to figure things out and talking to my sources. Democrats would go, this makes me feel good, this makes me feel nauseous. Republicans would go, this makes me feel good, this freaks me out. So they're all seeing good things and also not great things. So again, we're waiting to see that final vote till tomorrow. And, really Wednesday, when this is all said and done, we can count on the ballots. We can go, okay, this is what happened. It'll make total sense. The signs will be like, oh, the electorate was more blank, ergo, that's why candidate X won. It'll all make sense. The signs are there right now, whether it's the things are good for Democrats or good for Republicans. We just don't know if those signs will turn into votes that'll push either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump over the top in Wisconsin on Tuesday.
So, we've been talking about, election results, what we know so far, what trends you're seeing. Can you give us sort of like a how-to manual of what you're watching for in Wisconsin as election results roll in tomorrow night?
Yeah, I'll give you two good things to go look at, okay? So again, dork that I am, I've got a spreadsheet on my computer that has the past performance by county in some key places. So two I want you to look at tomorrow night are Dane County and Waukesha County. Now, the joke, crucial Waukesha County's been around in politics in Wisconsin for like 2 decades. It is very important, but it's just part of the puzzle. Still, there's a benchmark there. If I am Donald Trump, I want to make sure I get past 60%. I wasn't in 2020. I got just shy of 60% of the vote. If I get to 61%, I feel okay. Ron Johnson, winning by 1 point statewide in 2022, got 62.5%. So that would be even better, right, for Donald Trump. Now, in Dane County, Joe Biden got 75.5% of the vote there in 2020. In 2016, Hillary Clinton got 70.1%. Now, that includes third-party candidates, so, a Jill Stein type, maybe got to share the vote there, that kind of thing. But anyway, looking at tomorrow, if you look at the county clerk's website around 10 o'clock Tuesday night and you see that Dane County is going 78% for Kamala Harris, that's a good sign for her and a bad sign for Trump. So Trump, he got about less than 23% 4 years ago. If he gets there 24, that's really where he wants to try to cut in that margin there in Dane County. So watch those two. Those will give you a good flavor. They usually come in not early, but fairly early. We're going to be waiting on Milwaukee again. A couple weeks ago, we talked to the election officials there. They were optimistic they'd have a result, not long after midnight. Now, how long after midnight, we're not sure, but, wouldn't it be 5 a.m.? Now that we're seeing all these early votes come in, we've eclipsed 87,000, I think. That's a Friday. Early votes, both by mail and in person in Milwaukee. That's going to slow things down. That means you're talking more of a 2 to 3 a.m. type count. Now, I'm eternally an optimist. I would love to see it be done before that so I can get some sleep. But if that's the case, remember, Milwaukee does not report any of the early or any of the central count absentee vote returns until it's all done. They do it in one shot. So what will happen is you'll see a blue surge more likely than not, for Kamala Harris sometime in the early hours Wednesday, where those Milwaukee votes will come in, and a place like Green Bay and a Kenosha, they have central count too, and a Wauwatosa. When those come in, things will get bluer. So prepare yourself, however you're rooting for things to go tomorrow, that the returns early will seem fairly good for Trump. It'll get a little more purpley as the night goes on, especially when Dane County comes in. And then you've got that wait for Milwaukee. Whenever the city finishes up its central count with absentee ballots, it should bluify the results. I think I made up a word there, but things get more purpley. The question is, what shade of purple? Is Milwaukee comes in, Trump's still ahead, that probably means he's going to be okay. If Milwaukee comes in, Trump's behind, well, 4 years ago, Milwaukee came in, then Green Bay came in, and that put Biden to the top. So that's what I'm kind of watching for as the night goes on tomorrow.
And we've been talking a lot about the presidential race, but control of Congress is also at stake in this election. And as NPR reports, Democrats have a 2-seat Senate majority currently. Republicans in the House have a 4-seat majority. So it's just really a small number of contests that are really going to decide which party controls both of these chambers. What are the key congressional races to watch in Wisconsin right now?
So congressional races, there's really only the third in western Wisconsin that's being contested. The first, there was some efforts there by Democrats to make that a real race with Brian Stile, the congressman, and Peter Barca, the Democrat, who's a former revenue secretary, state lawmaker, actually represented that district like 30 years ago. But there's a group called the House Majority PAC, aligned with Democrats. It had 2 weeks of TV reserved that district. It pulled them all those reservations off the air. That tells you that they don't think there's a shot there to beat Stile. Now, miracles do happen, but usually you follow the money. That tells you that they're not confident in Barca's chances down there. Over in western Wisconsin, it's not as good a seat on the numbers in some ways. It's a Trumpier district, but House Majority PAC has got $4 million on the air last month. They're actually outspending the Democrats. If you had Rebecca Cook, the Democrat, the group's backing her, they're outspending Derek Van Orden, the Republican lawmaker, and his groups by a healthy chunk. So there's a commitment there, that district still. You need the top of the ticket to do well for you. Probably if you're Rebecca Cook, Again, a little bit of a Trumpy Republican-leaning district. So if Harris wins Wisconsin, that improves Rebecca Cook's chances. If Harris were to win by a couple points, it would help Rebecca Cook out a whole lot. But, that's a tall order. Like I said, we're seeing these polls, and they're all dead even. So barring something moving the electorate a little bit, one way or the other, if it's a jump ball, it makes it that much tougher for Rebecca Cook to win that seat.
And you don't think these latest, how do you interpret these latest spurts of news in the cycle that's been going on about comments that are coming out at rallies, whether it's about Puerto Rico being a floating island of garbage, or Biden's response about garbage, or comments about Liz Cheney's lack of war experience and that she should face 9. I'm kind of paraphrasing these comments, but there's been all sorts of comments like that.
It's the point we reach every cycle where it's okay. How do we gin up as much outrage as possible to inspire people, maybe inflame them if that's a word to use, to turn out? They're trying to find any gimmick they can to say, look what these other people are saying. You have to go to the polls. They don't want anybody to be unmotivated who's on their side. So if they can find any tool they can use to get somebody to turn out, they're going to use it. That's just the way it works in politics. And so every time there's a gaffe, perceived or real, they're going to use that to their advantage in these final days.
And can I ask this? Do you have any, advice on how people can get past their partisanship, like after this election and beyond? I mean, you're someone that talks to Republicans, talks to Democrats, talks to people from all different political perspectives. Do you have any insights into that?
Well, I think Irish whiskey helps. Just a recommendation that from my personal experience. But, it is, I understand as somebody who, my joke is I hate both sides equally after doing this for 25 years. I try and do my best to understand both sides and listen and see their point of view. That's how I have my conversations, and have done it for a long time with both sides. I don't know if others have that patience or interest, but that's what's worked for me.
Nice. All right. Well, thanks for that, JR. As a reminder, people can get information on this year's crucial races at wuwm.com/voter guide. And you can look up what's on your ballot at myvote.wi.gov. As always, thanks for the backstory, JR, and thanks for joining me on Capitol Notes.
Hey, good luck tomorrow.
Thank you. That was J.R. Ross, editor of WizPolitics.com, speaking with me, WUWM's Maayan Silver. Listen for our segments every other Monday with an extended segment on Lake Effect, and check out the Capitol Notes podcast wherever you get your podcasts.